Good day, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to talk about the Wilson Combat AR-15 handguard. This is one I've had for about 10 months, and I was actually originally not going to even do a video on it, but had a few questions come up about it recently in my comments, so I decided I may as well make an actual video about it because I can talk about them a bit more in depth here. So, as I said, this is the Wilson Combat rail. The reason I chose this one in specific has to do actually with the upper I'm using. I'm using a Gibbz, not a Wilson Combat, MG4 side charging upper. And this is a cool upper. However, one major thing that it does is it occludes the use of any handguard with anti-rotation tabs, which seems like a lot of AR-15s are moving towards these days. For example, you can see on this Odin Works here, we have anti-rotation tabs on here, which do make the installation quite a bit easier, and there are some durability reasons to use a handguard with anti-rotation tabs as well, but it just wasn't an option in the case of this upper. Originally on this rifle, I actually did have a different handguard on here. I'll put up a link to my original build video where I talked about the first setup I had for it, and it was just this. This is a GunTech USA 12-inch handguard. The main reason that I got rid of it was because I made a measurement error in my original build. This is a 12-inch handguard, and this is a rifle length 18-inch barrel, so of course the gas block is way out here, and I neglected to measure that properly, so it didn't cover enough of the gas block, and I didn't really like that. So that's the main reason why I switched. Another thing I do like about this when compared to the GunTech is this does have your regular 3, 6, and 9 o'clock M-LOK, but then you also have it up here on each of the 45 degree, or I guess you could say like the 130 and all that sort of angle, which is nice. I do like having all of those angles. Currently you can see I am running this slick. I don't really have anything on here except for a few rail covers. For the longest time, until just about a week ago, I had a vertical foregrip on here, just mounted right about here, and I also used to have, when I was using this, and actually you can see still have a rail section up here that I could mount like a light to and stuff like that. I didn't put one on here because this is a pretty small diameter. Of course, it doesn't have those anti-rotation tabs, which generally give it a better, larger. But because of that, you can see here this comes super close to touching the gas block, which did cause some issues as well when I was installing it, but I'll touch on that more later. And I did want to mention that just because, I have tested out the durability of this and it's not falling apart. I haven't put anything that needs to hold 0 on here, like a laser, so I can't say for certain that it would hold 0. However, it doesn't have an excessive amount of flex to it. If you can hopefully see somewhat right there, a little bit hard to show, but there is very little movement when you're pushing on the rail. So it's not something you have to worry about too much in that regard. However, it's not like it has absolutely no flex either. The only handguard I've seen that has effectively none whatsoever is the HK MR556 handguard, which is quite nice, but it's for an entirely different gun. On that note, however, I do prefer handguards that are a little bit more wide, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. They are more comfortable. I have pretty large hands. I know some people really like the super narrow rails, and I don't like them excessively wide either, but something like, as I mentioned, this HK handguard is quite nice, and the Odin handguard that I showed earlier is also quite comfortable. So I do like these that are a little bit larger. One other thing I do actually quite like, however, on this handguard is we do have a channel cut here in the Picatinny, you can see. I do like that for mounting lights and then running a pressure pad. You can route the cable for that very easily through there, and it just helps to really get it out of the way. Compared to the old GunTech handguard I was running, you can see the rail up there at the top. It's just your standard Picatinny. While I'm talking about the Picatinny here at the top, one other thing I do wish they had on this handguard, but as I mentioned, I would have preferred if this had numbers for each of the rails, but I just had to find a handguard that would work, and it was pretty hard to find one that didn't have anti-rotation tabs and had kind of all the other features I wanted. Rail numbers, what I'm referring to, as you can see, like with this one, they number it. which is always nice. I do prefer to have that whenever possible, but it's not something I care about a huge amount. So it's not a deal breaker to me that it doesn't have it. So that covers most of what I wanted to talk about with this handguard and just how it handles and how comfortable it's been with actually shooting it. Another big thing I wanted to talk about with this, however, is the installation of it. Because I had, it wasn't like a particularly hard installation by any means, but there was some weird aspects to the installation that I wanted to address. So, first off, the way that this does install is you have just a barrel nut. I know a lot of AR handguards now are starting to move to like a two-piece kind of barrel nut system, and then in addition it has like the part that goes onto the handguard itself, in the case that Odin works. Not going to go too into the weeds about it because they're all a little bit different. But in this case you have a single nut, and I'll show it on here. It's actually identical in how it installs to this GunTech handguard, just a different diameter and all that. So what I'm referring to with this barrel nut, you can see here, you have a bunch of holes here drilled for where the screws for the handguard will actually screw into, and you have a bunch of flats where your wrench is going to go, just all around it. Now the way this works is you do need to, although you have a bunch of holes drilled here, you do need to make sure that it lines up, at least one of them lines up to the 12 o'clock like perfectly. Otherwise you're not going to be able to get this indexed properly with your upper, and it's not going to work very well. So to do that, what Wilson Combat recommends you do is first just install it like normal, and if it all lines up, then that's perfect. If it does not, however, then they recommend the use of these little barrel shims. I had to use one in my case, so I had to take it on and off, I think 3 times, which is kind of insane. It was a little annoying to do that, but once you actually get it correct and then you just torque it down properly, then it's on and it's all good. One other thing, however, about the barrel nut is I noticed there is a discrepancy between the size that they recommend, or I should say the size that they say that their barrel nut is versus what it actually is. So online, unless they've changed it by now, which they may have, there is an error in Wilson Combat's documentation where online, I forget the specific size they give, but they say it's 1 inch and something, if I remember correctly, versus the actual size that they give in the installation instructions, which is 30 millimeter. So I bought this right here. This is just a 30 millimeter crow's foot. Just picked it up at a hardware store. And that is the actual size that their AR-15 barrel nuts are, at least as of recording this video. Since they've changed it in the past, they might change it again, so do make sure of that. But it's a little hard to actually make sure of that when the instructions they give you and their online description are saying 2 different things entirely. But it is actually 30 millimeter. Another issue I had during installation is, so I am using a JP Enterprises adjustable gas block. The way this works is you have a set screw that comes out the right side, right about here, and you can just back it out as much as you want to let more gas in or close it up a bit more. Pretty normal in that regard. However, the issue I ran into is I got this tuned perfectly with this old handguard, which you can see is, actually here, I'll hold these both up at the same time. You can see that the GunTech is a little bit thinner, or at least hopefully you can tell it's a little thinner. So it has a slightly larger inside diameter. And the issue I ran into when I switched to this Wilson Combat handguard is my set screw would actually collide. And unfortunately I didn't notice that until I actually went out to shoot it, and then I noticed that during installation, and I was wondering because I was having some other weird issues with it, but I actually ended up clocking my gas block ever so slightly, even though I'd initially reinstalled it properly after putting on the handguard. When I actually slid the handguard back on, of course, it turned it because it was impossible for it to fit when that set screw was coming out. So to fix that, I took out the set screw, and I have a set screw grub kit that I just picked up on Amazon. They're really, really cheap. And I just took a measurement of how much it needed to be screwed in, and just took a shorter set screw that sits flush with the side of the gas block. So I have the same setting. It's just now the set screw is perfectly flush with the gas block itself and doesn't cause any issue with the handguard. And while I'm on the topic of the gas block, the other thing I was mentioning earlier that I wanted to touch on here is, this is pretty obvious if you think about it, but it's something I just kind of didn't realize until it actually happened. Since this is a bit narrower of a handguard, you cannot use the M-LOK slot that is where your gas block is sitting. So unfortunately, in my case, that is the end one, which is rather unfortunate because that is the only one I was using. I have other options for mounting lights, so it's not really an issue anymore. But that is something you will definitely want to keep in mind, is make sure that also some of the larger gas blocks, you got to make sure it will actually clear it, because this one comes extremely close. It's not actually contacting it anywhere, but you can see everywhere it does come rather close to it. And I know a lot of handguards are like that, but as I keep bringing up this Odinworks that I'm kind of comparing it to, because I have it here on the table with me, since it is a bit larger, you don't run into that issue there, and the gas box is right there. You can see, got a lot more room there to work with. The last thing I wanted to touch on with this handguard is somewhat just the visual factor. You can see I have this here in green. So when you order this from Wilson Combat, you can also add on a custom color. They do it in so-called Armor-Tuff, which, you know, it's pretty similar to Cerakote. I don't know the specifics, but it does seem to be a little bit darker. There's a little bit of a color comparison. The main reason I wanted to bring this up is this is actually very durable. I've been really impressed. I haven't had any wear off whatsoever, which is more than I can say for the rest of my spray camo job on the rest of this, which is unfortunate because it looked pretty good at one point and now it's all scraping off. And that's also the reason why this handguard is not painted, even though I painted the old one, just because I had that and yeah, didn't want to really paint over it. But that about covers it. This is everything I wanted to talk about with this handguard. So I would say that it's decent. In the case of this upper, which was the main consideration for me on why I got this handguard, it works well. And also, really quick, in case anyone's wondering, though this doesn't particularly relate to the Wilson Combat handguard, it does relate to this upper. If any of you are wondering why I went with this handguard rather than one of Gibbz handguards, because they'll match perfectly with this upper, the reason for that is that both times when I bought the original Gun Tech handguard, as well as when I bought this Wilson Combat handguard, the Gibbz handguards were on back order. So I just didn't want to wait that long. I don't know how long their back order was, but it was just an availability thing. I would say, however, if you have a normal AR upper or just one that can fit an anti-rotation, a handguard with anti-rotation tabs, to go with one that's a little bit bigger. As I mentioned, I don't really like these super narrow handguards. It's not really so narrow as to where it's uncomfortable or thin, but yeah, I just personally do prefer to have it a little bit larger, but you can still get a very nice, comfortable grip here and not have an issue. Well, that covers it. So that is the Wilson Combat AR-15 handguard. Hopefully you all found this video informative. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Thank you for getting this far in the video, and take care. Hope to see you all in the next one. See you.